It's hard to know exactly where to start because I have no idea what levels of awareness people have around community food security. But I think maybe a good spot to put a line in the sand is that we have a big crisis when it comes to food. If you think about it from an equity and justice perspective, in this country we have 4 million of our fellow citizens who have trouble putting food on the table, or they're missing meals so their kids can eat. There's tremendous, as you know, tremendous vulnerability in far too many of our communities across Canada. And when you look at it from a health perspective, pretty much in every province across the country, 50 cents of every dollar is spent on healthcare. And a big chunk of that money is spent on diet-related illness, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, cancers. So we have a big crisis there. And then if you look at it from an environmental perspective, in Toronto, the average food item that you buy in the city travels about 4,500 kilometers from field to table. And that has enormous environmental impact related to climate change. So we have some very, very big problems out there, and food is a through line connected to all of them. And so when it comes to issues of equity and access, which is where Kathryn and I come out of, that's the field that we started in. The dominant response to food vulnerability in Canada, as our social infrastructure has been stripped away, has been the food bank. It's the way for 35 years we've constructed something where people will line up, get to the front of the line, and be handed not very healthy food. And so that's where I started, just to place me in this conversation, in 1998, in a very low-income neighborhood in Toronto. Culturally, very, very diverse, people from around the world. But they were unified by a lack of good jobs, social assistance rates that weren't supportive, housing that was far too expensive. And as a result, they ended up coming to this door that we had in the neighborhood. And they would have to line up at that door, and because the door wasn't open very often. And once they got in, they would be asked many, many questions. Where are you from? How much money do you have? And then when you got through that, you would arrive at the front of the terrible fluorescent lights and paint falling off the wall. It was a very difficult place to be in. You would be handed a hamper of food that was never enough, that was not healthy, and that was not culturally diverse in terms of what their food needs or knowledge. So we have, this number that 1 million people use food banks in Canada, but we have this other number that 4 million people are food insecure. There are a lot of people who will just simply not go through that process because they don't want to check their humanity at the door and have to go through that and get food that isn't terribly healthy or reflective of their culture and never enough.